friends, welcome back to the Photoshop Basics for Scrapbooking class. In this week's lesson, we are starting into a new series of videos where I'm going to be teaching you about using digital stamps. Now, digital stamps come in two different kinds of formats and sometimes even three different kinds of formats. Throughout the lessons this month, we're going to be talking about two of those formats, PNG and brushes, the differences between them, how you use them both, and the nuances of changing colors, resizing, all of that kind of fun stuff. Today, our lesson is just going to be the basics. What are PNG stamps? What are brush stamps? And how do we use them? How do we open them? That sort of thing. We're going to be going over the basics of both of those types of files. And then in the weeks to come, I'm going to show you all of the nitty-gritties of how to use each of the different types of files and how you can alter them and customize them to work for you in your scrapbooking projects. So without further ado, let's head over to my computer and I'm going to teach you about the two different types of stamp files and what exactly they are. Hey friends, welcome back over here to my desktop. So today we're going to be talking mostly about the differences between a PNG and a brush and how they relate to stamps that you would purchase digitally from really whatever company. Most companies, when they provide you with the files for your stamps, you're going to get both the PNG and the brush. And let me show you what that looks like inside of a file. I have pulled up a couple of different ones. One is this outline speech bubble from Ali Edwards, and the other one is the heart shape digital from Ali Edwards as well. So let's open up the outlined speech bubble. Now here you can see there is a preview photo that lets me see what this stamp is going to look like if I were to really have purchased the physical stamp, right? So it's in the orientation, the shape, it looks like the 6x8 stamp that you would get in the physical form. Then I've got a PNG file for each individual stamp that would be included on that set. There also comes with a terms of use for the files included in the download, and then you can see this one kind of funky looking file that says brushes on top of it, and it's got the two lines with the circles in them. Now, PNG stamps are going to open up inside of your program, whether you're working inside of Photoshop Creative Cloud or Photoshop Elements. It's going to open up just like you're opening up a photo as a separate file inside of Photoshop. So let me show you what that looks like. I'm just going to highlight a couple of these, maybe the first three, drag them into my Photoshop Creative Cloud window, and you're going to see them open up inside of this program. So here they are. Ready? So 1, 2, and 3, all separate files that are open in here. Now, because it's a PNG, all you're going to see is the stamp or the shape itself. The background is going to be transparent because when you add your stamp on top of a photo or journaling or whatever it is, you don't necessarily want to bring in a whole square of white background. So the backgrounds are going to be transparent, but that doesn't mean that the stamp won't copy and paste onto a separate file. So you can see that that is the same for all three of these files. Now, the major difference between the PNG and the stamp, aside from the fact that you're going to open it up in your program just like you would a photo or a journaling card, when you add them to a new canvas, you're going to add them in the same way that you would for all of those other files. You're going to copy all of it and then paste it onto the new canvas, and it's going to paste in as a new layer. Let me show you really quick what that looks like, but we're going to be talking a lot more about this next week when we talk about using PNG stamps on photos and new canvases. But just so you can see what I mean, let me just pull open an 8.5 by 11. Let's grab one of these stamp sets. We're going to select all of it, copy it, and paste it onto our new canvas. And you can see in the bottom corner here in our layers panel that it pastes in as a new layer that I can turn on, I can turn off, I can move it around and do whatever I want to do. Okay, so that is the PNG. The brush, on the other hand, basically what it means is it's going to load into your Photoshop program as an option for your paint brush. So to show you what this looks like, first we need to load the brushes into the system. For that, we can go to the file here and we're going to click on the brushes file and bring it into Photoshop Creative Cloud. And I'm going to do this here in a second for elements as well. So let's get it opened up in here, and nothing really happens, right? Nothing shows up on the screen as anything new. However, if we go into our brushes tool, so the brush tool, and we go up to this little folder at the top in the toolbar, you can open this up, and then you can see in here that there are a whole bunch of brushes inside of my little shapes here. Included in my brushes now are these speech bubble shapes. You can see them, right? So if I were to, let's close out of this for a moment. If I were to open up a new canvas, and again, we're going to have an entire lesson dedicated to using brushes on photos and canvases like this, where we'll go back through this all again. Today, I just really want to give you a brief introduction to both brushes and PNG files so you can see the difference between them and start to get an idea of how you might use them. Okay, so we've got the brush tool. Up in the little presets, I have clicked on one of those speech bubbles. When I bring it, and we can close out of this again, when I bring it onto my canvas, you can see there that it is in fact the speech bubble shape. So this allows me to quickly add a bunch of the same exact shapes onto my canvas. I can also reduce the size, increase the size. There's all different kinds of things here. But what I want you to keep in mind is when you use a stamp as a brush rather than a PNG, if I go onto my canvas and click my mouse, just one quick click, you'll see that it adds the speech bubble onto my canvas. However, down in the layers panel, you can see that it added it directly onto the background. It's not a separate file. So at this point, I can't necessarily move it around, resize it, play around with it in that kind of way. There is a hack in a way that you can create new layers for each of your stamps in order, or your brush stamps, in order to be able to move them around in that way. But for the purposes of this video, I just want to show you that when you add these onto your canvas, it's going to go directly onto your background. It's also a paintbrush. So if I click and drag, it's going to make the same mark over and over and over again, layered on top of each other. So, it's a paintbrush. It's going to work exactly like a paintbrush would work if you were to stroke it across your canvas. But there are a lot of great reasons why you might want to use a brush versus a PNG. I will throw this out there, I typically use PNG. When I'm working with stamps, I just find them a little bit more user-friendly, a little bit more customizable without having to do any extra steps, which you'll see more about in a couple weeks here, the extra steps you can go through to make brushes a little bit easier and a little bit more user-friendly as well. All right, so inside of Photoshop Elements, let's go ahead and do some of those same things. So we're first of all going to come in here. Actually, we don't even need that. I'm just going to bring open my file here. This time we're going to be working with the Hearts digital stamp. So I've got the PNGs here, and I'll just go ahead and open up one of these in Photoshop Elements by dragging it in. For this one, again, you can create a new blank file. Let's make this 8.5 by 11. And we can go ahead and select all of this, copy it, and paste it onto the 8.5 and 11, 8.5 by 11, and then we can move it around, resize it, twist it around, do whatever we want to do, right? And again, we'll talk more about this next week. But essentially, it pastes right onto the canvas as a new layer. Now let's talk about the brushes. To load in the brushes into Photoshop Elements, we're going to do something a little bit different than we did in Photoshop Creative Cloud. So what we want to do is go to the brushes icon here in the toolbar to the left. Then you're going to go down to this brush where you see the stroke right here, click on the arrow, and we're going to click on the hamburger. From here, in the bottom of the menu, there is a setting that says Load Brushes. So we're going to click on Load Brushes. Then we want to locate the brush file that we want to load in. In this case, I want to load in the 6x8 Heart Digital Stamp Set. Once I have that selected, I can click Load, and it's going to add them in just like so. So once I have those loaded in, then I can click on this brush down arrow menu and then go up to where it says brush with a semicolon, and you can click which one you want to open up. For me, I've got the Ali Edwards files here, the heart files, and I can then click on the one that I wish to use, reduce down the menu right there, and when I go on top of my canvas, I can do the same click in order to add it to the file. I can increase the size, decrease the size, whatever I want to do there in order to get this on the way I want it to look. But essentially that is the file. Here's the exact same one that we did before. There we go. So with the click, we can add it on, but again, inside of Elements, you can see over here on the background, it's adding those stamps directly onto the background, meaning I won't be able to adjust them without going an extra step. But still, a really nice way, a really easy way to add a bunch of the same shapes onto your layout. And if you click and drag, it does the same thing where it creates a brush stroke as if you were painting on top of your page. So that is the basics of the PNGs and the brushes. What I would love for you to do this week as homework is to locate a digital stamp file that you have on your computer, and I would love for you to add those brush files into your Photoshop program, whether that's Elements or Photoshop Creative Cloud. So add the brush into your program and then play around with it just a little bit. See if you can open up a new canvas and click and stamp the stamp set onto the canvas. And then also open up the files as a PNG and try to copy and paste them onto a canvas just so you can see the difference in the functionality of how those two different files work. Next week, we're going to be talking primarily about the PNG files. So we're going to learn how to add them to photos and different canvases, how to resize them, move them around, do all of that kind of fun stuff. So that is coming up next week. And then 2 weeks from now, we're going to turn our attention to brushes and learning some of those same functionalities with brushes. I hope that this has been helpful for you. If you have any questions, feel free to let me know. And until next time, have a great rest of your day. Bye, friends.